And we are just hours away from President Trump's first State of the Union address of his second term. And it looks like he's taking a little pause from the prep to bring the men's hockey team into the Oval Office for a little pep talk and celebration. They'll be at the speech tonight. Much more on that coming up in just a moment. But in the meantime, get ready for a late night.
We have a country that's now doing well. We have the greatest economy we've ever had. We have the most activity we've ever had. I'm making a speech tomorrow night, and you'll be hearing me say that. I mean, it's going to be a long speech because we have so much to talk about.
President Trump certainly teasing a long speech. He says he has plenty of wins to talk about, securing the border, foreign policy, and lower inflation. The president telling Bret Baier this: the country will see the best 3 years on the economy in the nation's history, and it's already started. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt laying out more of what to expect. Watch.
You're going to hear President Trump tackle that message head on tonight, and I know he's greatly looking forward to addressing the nation. His speech is going to be a celebration of the 250th year of America's independence. He is going to share the stories of great American heroes who exemplify bravery and the spirit of 1776. And the president is, of course, going to tout his administration's record-setting accomplishments over the past year while laying out an ambitious agenda to continue making the American dream more attainable and affordable for working class people across the country.
And Kellyanne, it is a chance for a president to say, okay, here's what I've done in the first year, and here's where we are going. So it's a big rate. It'll have a big rating, a lot of people watching in a lot of different ways, all the social media. What do you expect?
I expect that President Trump will review for us his first year in office. And I think the theory of the case, Dana, for year one of Trump 2 is investing in America. That undergirds his one big beautiful bill, preserving that corporate tax rate at 21% so that those companies then can invest in their workers, raise the wages, provide better benefits, go ahead and tell those who are not getting a college degree, you can work also, and you can provide for your family in this country. Technical, vocational, educational skills are very much back in fashion because of President Trump. The energy dominance, he was able to unpause those LNG permits that were paused by Biden, stop that war on fossil fuels, on fracking, look at non-subsidized solar and renewables. He's also going to talk, I think, about some new things like AI, if not crypto. In other words, here's a guy who's doing the bread and butter center-right issues as president, and he's delivered on those promises mightily. But I think he's going to dip into AI. He wants those data centers built. He wants us to embrace the next technological frontier in a way that makes us more efficient. Look, this is not aspirational. This is a man who has executed. He's a deal maker who's delivered. He's a peacemaker who I think is able to enter that hall. I did it 4 times with him. He's able to enter that hall, feel that moment, and feel the gravity of his position. But he also gets a lot of joy on the job. He loves thinking about the guests. It's a very curated process, who the First Lady and the President will invite in the box. He will appeal to all of them. He will mention some of them by name and their different, I think, travails. And I think President Trump is better than most, Dana, at conveying to us the real people impact, what I call the RPI. Who is really being impacted by the policies of this first year. And look, we even forget that they shut down the border almost a year ago. It was done so quickly and so efficiently that it's almost in the rear view. But that's still a big part of his polling. Put the ICE stuff aside for the moment. Big part of his polling is that he kept that big promise for national security, national sovereignty. One last thing, it is America's 250th. He's just going to appeal to the pride and patriotism of every America. We want America's 250th to be for all 350 million Americans, including a lot of the Democrats who aren't even showing up tonight.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in the next block, indeed. And Jesse, last year, one of the things I remember thinking is that, 2 years ago, the question was, can Biden get through the speech, let alone the next 4 years?
Right.
For President Trump, this time around, it's basically to remind people that President Biden was president and that they inherited quite a lot of problems in terms of the border, and certainly the economy and inflation.
Remember the last time Biden gave this speech, he was 15 minutes late, and we thought there was a medical emergency. But there will be no more emergencies tonight, except you're going to stay up past midnight, Dana.
Yeah,
because
that is an emergency.
I interviewed him after he gave the RNC speech, and I said, Mr. President, that was a long speech. And he said, Jesse, when the networks give you the time, you take the time. So he's going to take all the time he needs, and he deserves a lot of time because you agree I'm the most objective person on this table, right?
There's just no question about it.
Objectively, Dana, this has been one of the best first years in the history of the presidency. Rates, rent, crime, crossings, all down. He got handed 3.0 inflation, got it down to 2.4% with the tariffs, and that's because he kept energy prices low. He's going to try to press his advantage with the Democrats because he's going to announce things that no one can sit down and not clap. He's going to announce all of these great metrics, like baby bonuses. He's getting $1,000 for a new baby. How are Democrats going to sit there and not clap at that? He's going to announce Maduro's capture. He might bring Maduro out in handcuffs and say, yeah, I got him. How are Democrats not going to clap? So that's going to be the big contrast tonight. But then he has to lay out a very ambitious agenda. What's he going to do next? What is it going to be? It might be a surprise. It might be voter ID, but he's got to make sure the House and the Senate keep pushing the agenda forward. We could see some surprises. And then he's got the midterms. And so he's got to frame it. The Democrats, if you give them power, if you have the Republicans keep control, what's the difference? And we saw the difference. The Democrats were just in power, and they blew it. So we can't go back to that. He's got to push the agenda forward. And then finally, you mentioned it, Kellyanne, this is America's 250th birthday. And how fortunate it is for the president to be president during the 250-year birthday. So you'll hear a lot of themes of patriotism, of American exceptionalism, and he'll have some personal stories. We can talk about heroism, and you'll see the hockey guys out there, and everybody will be clapping for the hockey guys. The hockey guys might not even know what's going on because they're just a wee bit hungover. But if we can just keep this momentum going, I know you're not going to change things right away, still kind of hungover from Bidenomics, but if he could just make sure the country understands where we were and where we're going, I think we'll be in a pretty good place to restore the American dream.
Harold, it's great to be with you at this weirdly shaped table. How do you see a president's second year and this State of the Union, especially heading into the midterms? Are Democrats looking for anything in particular?
First off, good to be with you. I'm always inspired when this is my background. This is the greatest city, one of the greatest cities in the world, and certainly one of the greatest backdrops you could have. I'd say a couple of things. We're in a very different spot than we were a year ago. I remember being here for the president's joint session speech, and there was a lot of optimism, a lot of confidence. The president remains optimistic and remains confident, but there's a record here. I think the president tonight is probably looking for a little bit of a reset. You think about where the data is, the polling data, the most reliable polling data are elections. We had some last November. We've had a few sprinkled in between since then and now. Democrats are performing well. If you look at the polling data, 2 out of 3 Americans disapprove of the president's job performance, and 3 out of 4 independents disapprove of his job performance. He's got a lot of time to correct it, and tonight is one of those starts. I thought it was interesting when the president went to Georgia, he said that the affordability issue is fixed. It's not. If you look at the polling data, the #1 concern for voters are prices, cost of living. And the president makes the case, as Kellyanne was saying, that we're going to have a great second, third, and fourth quarter, that when the tax cuts hit in and when people get their tax refund, the economy is going to boom. I hope for the country's sake that is the case. And I hope for the president's case. I'm a Democrat, but I hope for his case that indeed is for his sake that indeed is the case. But he's going to have to do a little more. He talks a lot about things, but he doesn't follow through. We talk about reducing drug prices. He put up a great plan 2 weeks ago. I don't know what he's done. He talks about housing prices lowering them. He talks about Fannie and Freddie being more involved in helping to backstop and own mortgages, which could reduce the price of a home. He's done nothing on that front. Healthcare costs, emergency room costs are rising. People are facing longer waits. These are the kinds of things I hope the president talks about tonight. I know we'll talk about in the next segment, but I hope all Democrats go tonight. Hope all Republicans go tonight.
Well, you are not going to get your wish on that. It's up to over 70 at this point. Brian, in a lot of ways, because the president is doing so much all at once, it is hard to keep track. The cabinet has been out. They talk about all sorts of things from renewable energies and debate. Some of the things that are just like not that exciting to talk about necessarily, but they do make a difference for everyday people that are trying to get their permits done in order to build something. But he also has a lot of geopolitical planes in the air that he's trying to land. Some of them have been landed successfully, but there are a couple sticky wickets out there.
Yeah, Danny, you don't win the midterms in February, just like you cannot win the World Series if you're a baseball fan in April. And whatever you're doing, you line up in order to be successful when it matters, and that's in the fall. And the one thing I would say to the polls, you're right. Some people are not happy with the polls in WABC and the Washington Post poll. But when they asked, who do you trust more on the economy, Trump still wins by 2 points over any Democrat. Somehow Trump's got to make Democrats answer this question. What would you do? Besides, we want to make things affordable. We've seen your act. You have nothing except raising taxes and attacking Trump. And a little bit later, we'll talk about Robert De Niro, who cried about it. I also think there's a few other things you could point to. The Maha movement, I think, is going great. You know, the workers' families tax cut. He created the Trump accounts, which are strong. I'm not sure they're going to cheer for that, but I will say they're going to cheer for things like the hockey team. They're going to cheer for the fact that I don't know if people know that, know it or not, but in the Maduro capture, one of the helicopter pilots was severely wounded, almost lost his leg. He's going to be there. Are they going to sit on their hands for that moment? There's a World War II vet, about 100 years old, is going to be there. Are Dems going to sit there with popsicle signs again and ignore that moment? I think it's interesting. Trump's going to go 90 minutes, but just when you think it's going to be all about Donald Trump, he's going to bring in other people to make it more of a show, because Trump's got that sense of what you need to sell the story. I think Democrats embarrassed themselves last year. Some will be balking, but I'm hopeful they won't make this, because the whole world's watching. Please don't embarrass yourselves again and the country by acting like children. You lost an election. You could win the next one. At that time, I want nobody, no Marjorie Taylor Greene screaming out. I don't want to hear any Joe Wilson say you lied, and I don't want to hear what I saw with Al Green shaking his cane. It's embarrassing to the country.
All right. Well, so we are just getting started with our State of the Union coverage, which is under 4 hours from now.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.